What does it mean to be anti-consumer? I feel like it's necessary for me to make a dedicated video to this topic because I have recently been accused of misusing the word and just throwing the word at anybody who I personally do not agree with. Oh, you're anti-consumer. Oh, you're anti-consumer. I just throw the word around just to insult people and just to, I don't know. That's what people think about me. That's what some people have criticized me for doing. So I feel like it's necessary to actually make a video specifically dedicated to this topic to clarify what it means to be anti-consumer. So, just get the definition out of the way. Anti-consumer, someone who is anti-consumer is someone who goes against the interests of the consumer and aligns themselves with the interests of the, corporation, business, in the case of the gaming industry, the game publishers, Activision, EA, those companies. So when you support business practices that are against the interests of the consumer, so what business practice can I think from the top of my head? Like, okay, season passes and microtransactions, those kind of things that makes gaming more expensive for the consumer, which obviously is anti-consumer because then your hobby is getting more and more expensive. Gaming today is much more expensive than it was, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago. It's a much more expensive hobby to maintain. It's probably one of the most expensive hobbies that someone can have, and it's not a surprise that the gaming industry is one of the most profitable industries ever. It actually makes more money than the film industry and even the music industry. It makes the most money out of entertainment industries, and it makes total sense. Why? Because there's so many different opportunities for monetization in the gaming industry compared to, like, okay, the movie industry, you buy a ticket for a movie, you rent or buy a DVD, you buy a movie digitally or whatever. It's also much easier to pirate a movie than it is to pirate a game because consoles have, like, anti-piracy measures. If you pirate a game on the PlayStation 4, then it's pretty easy for them to detect because it's a closed platform. So it's much harder to pirate a game than it is to pirate a movie, so that kind of makes, that kind of increases the profit margins. And then you also have so many different opportunities for monetization. There's no such thing as microtransactions for movies. There's no such thing as season passes for movies. There's season passes for TV shows, but for movies and shit, and for music, there's no season passes. You just buy an album once and you listen to it the whole time. And plus, music is so easy to pirate. It's the easiest thing to pirate ever. All you need to do is go on YouTube. It's so easy that I do it myself. You just go on YouTube and you download, you use a YouTube to MP3 converter, which is pretty easy to find, and then you download the song from YouTube into an MP3 file, and then you plug, the USB on your phone into your computer, and you just transfer the file into your. It's so easy. It's so easy. I have so much free music on my phone. I'm sure I'm going to be in handcuffs now that I revealed that to the internet. But everybody does it. If they're going to arrest people, the reason why they haven't arrested people for it is because they literally have to arrest, like, most of the population, honestly. So, yeah, that's the reason why, in case anyone's shocked or curious that the gaming industry is the most profitable industry in entertainment, if you actually think about it, it makes so much sense, right? So, that's why it's so important to talk about whether or not certain practices in the gaming industry are anti-consumer, because it is the most profitable industry, and there are so many ways that the companies make money off of you from, it's, you have to think about whether or not these business practices are ethical, because, there are many concerning things that are going on in the industry. There's so much more microtransactions, and so, like, they used to just be on free-to-play games, which made total sense. No one was really complaining about that, because if it's a free-to-play game, then they gotta make money somehow, and the money that they make is through microtransactions. Now, some people, think that free-to-play games shouldn't exist and that free-to-play games are bad, especially with the mobile market, because the mobile market is, filled with free-to-play microtransaction bullshit. But I think what's most troubling is the recent trend where you have full-priced $60 games. And I'm talking specifically about Call of Duty because that's where it's really concerning. It's a full-priced $60 game that has microtransactions in it. And not just any microtransactions. It has microtransactions that give you weapons that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So you must you must get the supply drops in order to get these weapons in Black Ops 3 or Advanced Warfare or whatever game, Infinite Warfare. I don't really think anyone really cares about Infinite Warfare weapons because nobody cares about Infinite Warfare. But you know what I'm trying to say. It's pretty concerning that these $60 games that you pay full price for, expecting to get everything in the game, to get all the content, and then you have to pay microtransactions constantly. And you could pay all the microtransactions you want. You could probably spend $1,000 worth of microtransactions and wind up not even getting the weapon you're looking for. That's why they make so much fucking money. That's why. So it's very concerning because you paid $60 and you're expecting to get everything, and then you wind up spending much more than it costs just to buy a console alone to get all the content in the game, if you think about it. And it's a $60 game. Free-to-play games, you could let that slide because it's free-to-play. You technically don't have to spend anything to play the game. And I think free-to-play is okay. I think it's a good system, honestly, because there's so many poor, there's so many poor gamers that can't really afford to buy games or to buy $60 games. So free-to-play is an option for them. It's a good option, especially on the PC where you don't have to pay for online. And let's talk about paid online. Paid online is a really hot topic. People debate it all the time. Specifically, PC gamers talk about how it's anti-consumer, it's a bad business practice, and that nobody should support it. And then the console gamers somehow justify in their own way. The PC gamers are right. It is very anti-consumer to have paid online, especially when on the PC it's absolutely free. You do not have to pay anything. You don't have to pay Valve $60 a year or whatever dollars a year to just be able to play the games online, because you have to pay $60 a year just to play your games online. So when people talk about the free games, you get free games. Yeah, that's the way they try to put it in your head that what they're doing is ethical. They're trying to distract you. They're having all these nice, features. Oh, you get free online, you get online store, all this other bullshit you get from PlayStation Plus. But nobody cared about that before the PlayStation 4, when on the PS3 days when PlayStation Plus was just an option. It was optional. It had all those, nice little extra features, but you also still was able to play for free online. It's just that PlayStation Plus was PlayStation Plus. It was an extra thing. But now it's mandatory. So yes, it is necessary to acknowledge that, yes, this is a very bad business practice. It's very anti-consumer. The reason why so many people put up with it, though, is because they really have no other choice, you know what I mean? Like, you could tell, well, just move to PC, but, especially, you have to keep in mind that these are people who bought the console because their friends had it, right? So they saved up so much money just to get that PlayStation 4 or that Xbox One, and then once they get it, they get it, okay, they're good for a year, they get a PlayStation Plus card, and then let's say a year from now, their situation's bad or they're broke or whatever, and, they have a hard time coming off the money. It's so foolish of people to expect them to just move to PC when it would cost them another extra $100 when they could just pay the $60 every year. You have to understand, maybe you can make the argument that once the next generation of systems come on, that yes, they should make the jump to PC. Yeah, but if you're talking about right now in the moment, it's just such a ridiculous thing to expect everyone to just move to PC when they have their console, when they play their console with their friends. You know what I'm trying to say? So you need to be at least, I think people need to be more understanding when it comes to the whole paid online thing, but yes, it is without a doubt anti-consumer. So there are plenty of anti-consumer practices that go on in the industry. So many, season passes, whatever. But it's important to point out, right? So what I strive to do on my channel when I talk about video game related topics and proposals that I have for games and what game companies should do with their business practices, the way they should do business, I try to do it in a way that it's realistically possible. It's realistic for them to turn a profit. So there's so many people in the community that have such unrealistic demands, that have such ridiculous demands for, to game publishers and game developers, that they're going to be ignored. And you can't expect them to not ignore you because you're being too unreasonable to them. Because you are expecting, there's so many people in the community that expect, too much, I think. Too much from the game publishers. There should be no exclusive games at all. Exclusive games should not be allowed. And all these other things, there shouldn't be any DLC whatsoever. There shouldn't be anything, that's very unrealistic to expect. Because, you're doing it in a way that they can't really make money. You know what I mean? So, just charging $60 for a game is, that's the way it used to be, right? And I do think that games should be $60 and that should be it. But when you say that game companies or game companies should have certain expectations that typically that in reality aren't realistic, that's when it becomes a problem. So when we're talking about, there shouldn't be any exclusive games at all, even though that's how Sony makes their money, because Sony has their PlayStation platform, and when they're selling a game, when they're selling Horizon Zero Dawn, when they're selling Uncharted, people make the argument, they will be able to make money because it will be available on all platforms, except they don't care about actual game sales. They care about those game sales transitioning into sales in the PlayStation ecosystem overall. So what I'm trying to say is that PlayStation funds games like The Last of Us. They have so many exclusive games, not because they want the games themselves to sell well, but because they want the PlayStation 4 as a brand, the PlayStation as a brand to sell. So that way they make money from software sales, on the PlayStation Store. It's completely unrealistic to expect them to throw their exclusive games away and just put it on the PC. They wouldn't make nearly as much money as they would. So you need to be at least reasonable and realistic when you make expectations, when you have demands for these game companies. And that's what I strive to do. I strive to be as realistic as possible, to be like, okay, well, I say that, we really shouldn't have microtransactions in $60 games. I really don't think that's a really good thing that's going on. And just having, every single game having season passes and the DLC not even being that great. You know what I mean? Not great enough to justify $50 extra for the game. So there's certain things that you can be like, yes, this is immoral. But ultimately, just complaining about it online isn't going to solve your problem. So people who buy the Call of Duty games every year but complain about it every year, they're not doing anything because they keep buying the game. You really think that Activision cares about you complaining online when you keep buying your games anyway? You know what I'm saying? Why do you think Call of Duty has been so shitty for so many years? It's because they got away with it. And yes, there was such negative reception towards Call of Duty for so many years, but they kept making their money. They didn't give a shit. You know what I'm trying to say? So, what does it mean to be anti-consumer? It means to go against the interests of the consumer in a way that it harms the consumer and only benefits the corporation and the business. I do not think that. So when I think of pro-consumerism, when I think of being pro-consumer, being for the consumer, I do think that it's okay to give the publishers, to give the businesses some leeway with some of their practices, because if you don't let them do anything, then they're not going to make money, And in a way, that is anti-consumer, because if they're not making money, then they can't make these games anymore. And if they don't make the games anymore, then the industry as a whole suffers. And if the industry as a whole suffers, then that obviously harms the consumer. So the term anti-consumer is definitely open to interpretation, but I think that my interpretation of it is pretty spot on. So when I made the Saints Row video, that's where the criticism really came from. People were going at me on Twitter and shit. When I called out Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4 fans for being anti-consumer, they did not like that. They're like, "How? You're just throwing the term anti-consumer at us for no reason, except it's for a reason." If you compare Saints Row 2 to Saints Row 3, it's like Saints Row 3 doesn't even have any of the features that Saints Row 2 had. They took out online multiplayer. They took out all the customization options. They took out pretty much the foundation of the Saints Row series and just replaced it with whatever crap that they were making. So that, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, that's anti-consumer. What do you mean it's not anti-consumer? People are trying to justify, oh, but it's a great game on its own. But, okay, what's the name of the game, though? Saints Row 3. 3 meaning it's a sequel. So, no, the whole argument that, well, you should just judge the game by its own and not as a sequel. But it's a fucking sequel. It's like, well, we shouldn't judge the Star Wars prequels based on the other movies because, they're their own movies or something like that. It's a dumb argument to make, but whatever. I'm done with the whole Saints Row thing. I pretty much covered that bullshit. But yeah, I do think that it's important for us as a community to understand when a business practice is in fact anti-consumer, and the fact that if we don't like something, we need to vote with our wallets. We can't just tolerate everything that happens because, the industry is going to suffer in the long term if we just, keep bending over and let them fuck us in the ass. Because, in the short term, they're going to make a lot of money, but in the long term, it's just going to become too expensive and less economically viable for someone to be a gamer. Honestly. So it's very possible the way that the gaming industry is headed, it's not headed in a positive direction, it's headed in a very negative direction. And it is very possible that somewhere down the line, could be 5 years, could be 10 years, whatever. It depends on the way things go. We could be heading towards another video game crash. I know it sounds very absurd to some people. Oh yeah, that's not going to happen. Trust me, it can happen, and it probably will happen if things keep going the way they're going. So that's why it's very important to understand what it means to be anti-consumer and to take part in these business practices, because you need to understand the harm that you're actually doing. So, I hope I clarified a few things in this video. I thought it was a very interesting topic, something that, it was just interesting to talk about. So, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.